In the deepest part of Blackwood Forest, hidden beneath a canopy of ancient trees and shrouded in constant mist, stood a decaying mansion that everyone in the nearby town avoided. Its towering frame loomed against the darkened sky, its windows broken and empty, like hollow eyes watching over the forest. No one dared to go near it after nightfall, and even during the day, the bravest of hunters and wanderers would not set foot beyond its rusted gates. It was whispered among the townsfolk that the mansion was cursed, a dwelling place of vengeful spirits, a home to shadows that did not belong to this world, and a stage for phenomena that defied explanation. Yet, for a group of young friends, the warnings and rumors were not deterrents, but invitations. Where others saw danger, they saw adventure. Where the town spoke of curses, they heard a mystery waiting to be unraveled. The mansion, to them, represented the ultimate test of courage, a challenge too great to resist. One crisp autumn night, with the wind rustling through the bare branches and the moon casting pale light through the fog, they made their decision. Armed with flashlights that flickered, cameras to capture proof, and a nervous mixture of bravery and fear, they pushed open the iron gates and stepped onto the path that led to the house. The front door resisted them at first, its swollen wood groaning under their touch. But then, with a long, dreadful creak, it swung open, as though the mansion itself had been waiting for them. Inside, the air was heavy with dust and decay. The hallways stretched out into darkness, and the walls were lined with portraits of the long-dead inhabitants. The eyes of those paintings seemed to follow every movement, each brushstroke gaze charged with accusation or warning. The sound of their footsteps echoed unnaturally, and every creak of the floorboards felt like a whisper from the past. At first, their nerves carried them forward. They laughed softly, trying to dismiss the unsettling atmosphere, convincing themselves that the house was no more than wood, stone, and the power of their own imagination. But the deeper they went, the harder it became to ignore the strangeness. A door would slam shut behind them without warning, though no wind could be felt. Faint whispers drifted through the air, seeming to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. Shadows slithered along the walls and across the floor, moving in the corners of their eyes, vanishing the instant they turned their heads. The friends told themselves it was only tricks of the light, tricks of the mind, but unease gnawed at them, sinking deeper with every passing moment. The true horror revealed itself when they stepped into the mansion's vast library. Dust-covered shelves towered above them, heavy with books that had not been touched for decades. At first, the room was silent, suffocatingly so. Then, without warning, books began tumbling from the shelves, one by one, then in clusters, as if invisible hands were hurling them across the room. The friends froze, their flashlights jerking from wall to wall. From the shadows, a laugh rose, low at first, then growing into a terrible, echoing sound that filled every corner of the library. It was not human, yet not entirely inhuman either. Panic seized them, and they turned toward the door, only to hear it slam behind them, with a finality that left no hope of escape.
Trapped, their hearts pounding, they huddled together. Then, from the thick gloom, she appeared. A figure, pale and ethereal, stepped into the beam of their trembling lights. It was a woman, dressed in clothing from another age, a flowing gown that shimmered faintly with a light of its own. Her face was twisted in a haunting blend of sorrow and fury, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly brilliance that pierced through their very souls. She raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed toward the ground. Their eyes followed her gesture to a book that lay open among the fallen volumes. An old, weathered diary. One of them bent down, trembling, and picked it up. The diary revealed the tragic history of the mansion, a tale of love betrayed, of cruelty and revenge, and of a curse born from despair. The woman whose spirit now haunted the halls had been wronged, her love torn from her, her life destroyed by treachery. In her grief, she had bound not only herself, but every soul in the house to an eternity of wandering within its walls. Now, centuries later, her spirit lingered, torn between vengeance and longing for release. As the friends read, the whispers grew louder. They were no longer just random voices, but words, pleading, begging, imploring. The souls trapped in the mansion cried out to be freed, their torment echoing through every gust of wind, every shifting shadow. Fear threatened to overwhelm the group, but amid the terror, a realization dawned. They could not leave, not unless they ended what had begun so long ago, not just for their own lives, but for the countless lost spirits condemned to suffer endlessly within the cursed house. Together, with trembling hands, they searched through the diary and discovered instructions for a ritual, one not of destruction, but of forgiveness and release. Though their voices shook, they stood in a circle and recited the words, their voices weaving together in a fragile rhythm. The mansion itself seemed to resist them, the walls groaning, the floor trembling, a cold wind surging through the halls as though trying to extinguish their courage. But they pressed on, their voices rising louder, firmer, uniting in defiance of the curse. The ghostly figure hovered before them, her eyes locked on theirs. For a moment, her expression softened, the fury melted, replaced by something fragile and human, a sadness so deep it seemed to stretch across centuries. As the last words of the ritual echoed into silence, the house shuddered violently, and then, at all once, the weight lifted, the oppressive air cleared, and the laughter, whispers, and shadows vanished. The woman's figure gave them a faint, sorrowful smile before fading like smoke carried away by the wind. When the door opened this time, it was not with menace, but with release. The friends stepped outside into the cool night, their lungs filling with fresh air as if for the first time. Behind them, the mansion stood silent, no longer a prison of restless souls, but a relic of a past that had finally been laid to rest. They made a vow as they walked back through the forest, never to forget the night when they faced the darkness together. Blackwood Mansion would no longer be remembered as a place of fear and death, but as a place where courage triumphed over despair, where forgotten souls were finally granted peace. The townspeople who had once spoken only of curses and shadows began to tell a new tale, a story of redemption, of forgiveness, and of a group of friends who had dared to confront the whispers in the abandoned mansion and had turned fear into hope. Since that night, the mansion remained in peace, standing quietly in the heart of Blackwood Forest, not as a warning, but as a reminder that behind every legend of terror lies a human story, one of love, mistakes, and the eternal need for forgiveness.